Hello, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video is one video that I promised to do. For those of you who followed my interview tips series, that is a series I did on interview tips. It was 3 videos that touched on what you need to do before an interview, what you need to do during an interview, and what you need to do after an interview. Now, I talked about the questions that you need to ask hiring managers or interviewers during the interview itself, and this is the video I have come to deliver. If you are new here and haven't seen these videos I just spoke of, you can find the links in the description box below, so not a problem. You're not going to miss out on anything. The links are right there for you to click and watch. If you're wondering how to subscribe to my channel, it is very easy. Just look to your right hand side and hit the subscribe button. That was very easy, right? Okay, so don't go anywhere and I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, if you're watching this video right now, then it means that you already know that saying no to when you're asked if you have any questions during an interview is a no-no. It should not be a consideration or even a tiny little thought. You must have questions. To make this a little organized, I'll be putting the questions into segments or categories. The first is questions you can ask about the company, questions you can ask about the job, questions you can ask about the interviewer, questions you can ask about the recruitment process, and questions you can ask about your performance during that interview. So my very first question is, what is the direction or what are the goals of this organization, and what is this department's role in achieving these goals or objectives? Okay, now this is a two-part question because it touches one on the company's overall structure, overall goal, overall objectives, what their vision is, say for the 1 year. And it also touches on the department that this role sits with or sits under. It talks about their role in achieving the organization's This question is a good question because it basically shows that you care about the bigger picture and you are already trying to connect the dots between this role, should you get the role, so your role, and how you can ultimately contribute to the overall organization's goals. Number 2 question is about culture. Now, I'm not a big fan of people asking, so what is the culture of your organization? Or what does the culture look like? Now, to me, it's a very vague question. 1, 2. You can really find out about the company's culture on the internet these days via their social media, via LinkedIn. So don't ask questions you can already find the answers to, okay? You don't have to ask the questions that you can just type and find the answer. So how about you make it more specific? In order to truly learn more about the company's culture, I would advise that you ask a more specific question like, what are the top qualities exhibited or portrayed or displayed by the top performers within the organization? This is a very good question because it is helpful for you to know more about their values, what they value, the traits that their ideal employees should have, because the top performers, the all-round top performers, are typically the ideal employees of the organization. So that way you know about the values, you know about the traits, you know about the characteristics, and all of this truly is what makes up the culture. Make up the culture. The third question you can ask during an interview about the company or its culture is, how does leadership connect or engage with the employees in the organization? This is a very good question because it speaks to so many different things. It speaks to the management style, the level of hierarchy, how hierarchical they are in the organization. It speaks to employee engagement as well. It helps you assess if this company is truly the right fit for you. Because remember that an interview is a two-way street. So if they're interviewing you to know more about you, you also have the right to interview them. And this type of question helps you do just that. Moving on to questions you can ask about the job. The first question is, why is this role open? Why are you looking to find this person? Now, this is a question that almost everybody asks, and it's pretty common. I know, you probably asked it before, but it's also a very critical question because it kind of shapes the rest of your questions when it relates to the job, okay? Now, personally, as an interviewer, I don't really like getting this question. So what I try to do, because I consider it a very important question, but at the same time, I want for people to make the best use of their time to ask me other questions. So what I try to do though is before the interview commences properly, before I start to ask questions, I give you a brief intro where you learn if this is a new role, if it's a backfill or an additional headcount, why this role exists in the first place. I would answer the question right before you ask me the question. So if you don't get to meet a Jess or someone like me or who do things like me, then feel free to ask this question. I think it's an important question. So number 5 question today is, what would success look like in this role in 6 months? So if I were to take on this job, or if I were offered this job and I accepted this job and 6 months comes, what would success look like for me? So this is a very good question that you can ask directly to the hiring manager. But if you're not interviewing with the hiring manager yet, feel free to ask the recruiter or any interviewer that you're speaking to, because if you're interviewing candidates, then you must have a good idea of the role expectations. The 6th question you can ask, which also falls under the job segment, is what are the current challenges the role owner should expect should they join? Yes, and this question can be a 2-part question, a 3-part question. Make it your own, okay? You can go further, still in the same question, just so you get your interviewer to talk a little bit more. So you get them to answer even more than you asked. That's the trick. So when you ask questions like, what are the current challenges with this role? You can just take it a step further by saying, and what are the expectations of this role that are not highlighted in the JD or we haven't talked about so far? If you're interviewing directly with a hiring manager, you'd find that they have a lot more to say than the other interviewers that are not the hiring managers, yes? Because they own the role, they know exactly what they want, you know. You can also take advantage here. Sorry, I like to take advantage of, anything that has to do with questions. I love to ask questions. You can take advantage here because it would end up being a conversation before you know it versus a response, a question and answer segment, yes? So you can ask them, so what is your management style? Just in line with your expectations of whoever takes on this role. I know that's like a 3-in-1 question, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. You can keep it sweet and simple by asking about the challenges alone, or asking about their management style alone, or asking about the expectations of the role that are not highlighted in the job description. So either way, you most likely will get the answers to these 3 questions, however you want to wing it. But ultimately, this is a very good question because it means to them, that's the company, the employer, the interviewer, that you are someone who's already thinking about the work that you will do and how you can fit in and add value. The number 7 question I'll share today is a question for the interviewer, and it goes, why did you join this company and how did you get into the company? So this is a good way for you to connect with the interviewer. So this is you personalizing the interview and you're making it about the interviewer, or personalizing the question. So it's not about the company directly, but it's also about the company in a way. So you get information as to what they like about the company, what their passions are, what drives them, what made them join the company. So you would typically hear a lot when you ask this question. It basically answers the what do you like about this company question. So let's ditch that generic question and ask it this way. And guess what? You most likely would get a few smiles and laughter here and there. So it's a really good way to connect with your interviewer. Next question you can ask your interviewer, which is our 8th question, our number 8 question for today. You can ask them, what areas or aspects of the organization of a company require improvements? So this way, you're letting them know that, hey, I know your company isn't perfect and there has to be something that requires improvement. There has to be something that needs to be worked on. What do you think those things are? And this is a good way to ask the negative question of what don't you like about the company? So you're still getting the same response, but you're not asking it in a negative way. Moving on to questions about the recruiting process. Now, I love a 2-part question where I just get more value for my questions, like more answers. And instead of you asking, when should I expect to hear back alone, you can say, when should I expect to hear back and what does the recruitment process for this role look like? So then you get all the answers when it comes to knowing about the recruitment process, what next steps look like, who's interviewing you next, etc. It's a good way to get all your information at once. Finally, our final question for today. Now, this is my absolute favorite question, and it requires some guts. Yeah, it's not a very easy question to ask for the interviewer, and even for you, it requires some courage. And the question is, are there any skills, experience, qualifications that you wish I had in order to make me a better candidate? You see, it's a very difficult question. It's difficult for the interviewer because you're putting them in a tight corner. You're basically forcing them to tell you right there how you performed. And it's a brilliant question for you to ask, because you know right there if you are going to move forward. You know right there, at least if you're honest with you, okay? Let's pray that you meet an honest interviewer who would tell you straight, like, hey, I think you were great, I think you were amazing. And it's an opportunity for you to further prove yourself. So if an interviewer says, yeah, I mean, I think you did well overall, you know, I just think you're lacking in this area, XYZ. Now that's a great time for you to go in there, just hammer in that, oh, actually, maybe I wasn't clear enough, or maybe I didn't speak a lot to this point, but I have done this before. So if you're looking for experience doing a certain type of project and they felt like you didn't really speak to that because you don't have the experience, at least they think you don't have the experience, this is a great time to go back in there and say, hey, actually, listen, I've done this, I know it, and I can do it. So it is such a good question any day, anytime. It just requires some courage. Okay, they could tell you right there, actually, no, you're not the right fit for this role. I think you are looking for someone who's more this, who's more that, and maybe you're not any of these things. So you need to be ready to take feedback, okay? But it's such a good question because the interviewer would see you differently. They would see you as someone who has a feedback or growth mindset. Because if you're asking this question, like I said, you have to be ready for whatever outcome. It could be positive. I don't want to say negative. So let's say it could be good or bad, right? It could be good or bad. So it's either it works in your favor or it doesn't. So you have to be ready for that. But what is most important here is it says a lot about your self-awareness. It means that you're self-aware enough to know that you are not a perfect candidate. Besides, there is no perfect candidate. So they know that you're not perfect by this question, and you're looking to see how you can take the information and better yourself. So whichever way it goes, there's something for you to take back home and learn from this. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I truly hope that this was helpful to you. And please know that there are so many more questions you can ask. This is not all encompassing. This is just a guide to the type of questions that you can ask. And you're not going to ask all 10 of these questions. Pick your top 3 to 5 questions and go prepared to ask these questions, okay? I wish you the best in your next interview, and I pray and hope that you crush it. Bye, you guys.